All right, 20 years ago, I stood where a lot of you are standing right now, except I was in the Fort Beardy's Memorial Coliseum in Auburn University, where I was finally about to receive my degree in software engineering. And prior to obtaining that degree, I had the privilege of serving, or working rather, for the National Security Agency in Fort Meade, Maryland. And that was a formidable time in my life. And it was a formidable time in the history of our nation because I was there during the 9/11 terrorist attacks. And I would say before my work at the NSA, I was one of those typical shy, awkward kids, like a lot of us were growing up. So not very outgoing, loved life, but just not very outgoing. But when I worked at the National Security Agency, I really started to come in my own as an individual, as a human being, as a man. And made a lot of friends, some of which I'm still friends with today. But after graduation, I decided for several reasons that I was not going to move back up there, not going to take my at the time, new life. We were not going to make a family in Maryland. And so we decided instead that I was going to go to Florida and work for a defense contracting company on the eastern coast of Florida. And that was the beginning of 5 very difficult years of my life. But before I talk about that, I do want to say, Vice Chancellor Jeffrey, Chancellor Hawkins, thank you so much for the invitation to be here today, and thanks as well to the staff and the faculty of the Troy system for doing what you do every day to brighten the minds of our fellow citizens and really beyond our shores. So I took that job at this defense contracting company. And I figured out pretty quickly, matter of fact, about 6 months into my work, that maybe I've got the wrong degree, and that's very defeating, right? So I've spent almost 5 years, I'm ashamed to say, struggling, trying to get this bachelor's degree. And 6 months into my career, things are not going good, and they're not going good on paper because I'm getting my performance reviews in. They were never good up until the last one I received, which I thought was funny. But it was not going good, and I was failing. I always considered myself to be a successful person, but there it is every 6 months. My failure is right there on that performance review. One of the people that I met at this company was a guy named Ralph. I will never forget Ralph. Ralph was a baby boomer. He had a buzz cut, not a big guy, not a little guy. Kind of hunched over the shoulders, kind of had a slack jaw. And nobody talked to Ralph that much. He was in a perpetual bad mood. But I got to know him a little bit because we worked in the same lab together. And so I talked to him. And he had these one-liners. And I'll never forget what he told me. He said, "Brandon, I used to come to work for this company, or when I came to work for this company, I thought I would come because I really enjoy the work. I really enjoy the technology. I thought I would really enjoy what I was going to do here. But what I figured out is that the only reason I come to work now is because I've got to pay the bills." And so you can tell, I was struggling at the time with, I guess, my life choices. And I'm seeing Ralph still struggling with his. He told me another time, he said, "Brandon, working at this company is a lot like stirring crap." I was like, what are you talking about, Ralph? He said, "Every project is just another stir of the same crap." And I rocked along for a few more months, and I was stopped in the hall one time by a guy named Tim. Tim was one of the higher-ups in the building that I worked in. Tim stopped me and said, "Brandon, I've been noticing you need to smile a little bit more." I mean, I knew I was miserable, but I did not know that I wore my misery on my face. But what really struck me is that he was the second person to tell me that in the span of about a week. And it was like my eyes had been opened up, and I could see off into the future, and I could see myself maybe about 5 years away from retirement with a buzz cut, hunched over the shoulders, with a slack jaw, perpetual bad attitude. And I knew that that's not what I wanted for me. And I remember telling myself, this is not the life that I want. And so, after much consternation, my wife and I decided to sell our home, and we moved back to the land of opportunity, to Dothan, Alabama. And in my naivety of being 25 years old, I thought, okay, I still had confidence for some reason. All right, I'm done with technology. I want to sell commercial real estate. And so you can imagine how naive that was. 25 years old, no professional contacts at the time in Dothan, and I'm going to sell commercial real estate. And so, the market was booming, did okay, but never really great. And then in 2007, And in 2008, the market began to come unwind, and I knew, okay, the writing's on the wall, that chapter is closing. I knew I had to do something else. But by that time, we had a child. We had child number 2 on the way. And necessity, as always, is the mother of all motivation. And I knew I could not fail at whatever I pivoted to. And I considered myself to be kind of a failure at this because I've had 2 professional failures so far, and I'm still just 25 years old. And so I started a web development company, thinking I'm a failure because I'm going to have to go back on the technology background of mine, but I started a web development company. And although web development is not the most exciting thing in the world, what is exciting were the people that I got to meet every day, the business owners. I wasn't necessarily chained to a desk. I was out meeting people, helping people solve complicated problems. And in those days, websites were complicated problems. They weren't point and click like they are today. They were very complicated. And I thrived in that business, and the business began to grow. We eventually grew to about a 4-man shop, which in Dothan, Alabama, by the way, that's a pretty big deal when all you do is build websites. And for a while, we were now across the state of Alabama. I sold that business in 2016. In 2014, I ran for District 4 of the County Commission, and last year I was elected the Houston County Commission Chairman. But I'm not here today to talk to you about struggle. I'm not here today really to talk to you about success. I do not consider myself to be an expert on that topic. But I'm here today to talk to you about something I think you need more, something that I think if you have this, you'll be much more likely to be successful as you go through in your personal and in your professional life. And I'm talking about joy. Not the joy that comes from success, not the joy that comes from things that you've achieved. That joy is fleeting. That's going to go away pretty quickly. I'm talking about the joy that you have every day inside your heart. I'm talking about that joy. And so today I'm going to talk to you about how to nurture that joy and about how to protect it. And the first bit of advice I have, as you can imagine, is don't go to work every day doing something that makes you miserable. Now, looking at the number of graduates, prospective graduates that we have here today, I can go ahead and predict that some of you are going to get out in the workforce and you're going to figure out, maybe 6 months, maybe a year, you're going to figure out maybe I've got the wrong degree. I'm here to tell you that's okay. The fact that you have strove for years to obtain the degree that you have, that you're about to receive on this piece of paper, means as much to potential employers as the words that is printed on that degree. So don't worry, and don't think of yourself as a failure. Think of it just as part of your story, maybe a story that you will recount, that you will talk about 20 years from now when you're giving an invocation. Next thing I want to tell you is we all need to disconnect to reconnect. So what do I mean by that? I mean, as much as possible, need to stay off of social media. Now, I will tell you, I am on social media. I have to be because that's where the world communicates, and I'm a politician, I'm an elected official. I've got to communicate in that world. But social media, let me ask you this. For those of you that were in a hurry today, and you were eating your ham sandwich or your peanut butter and banana sandwich, how many of you took a picture of that sandwich and posted it on Facebook? Probably nobody. All right, but some of you may go to Florence, Italy, and celebrate your degree in a week or a month from now. And maybe you'll imagine you go in the finest restaurant in Florence, and you have this most exquisite presentation at this awesome restaurant. You're going to want to take a picture of that moment to preserve it, right? To preserve it in your memory. And then you're going to be tempted to post it on social media. And then everybody else is going to see that, and they're going to compare their boring, mundane life to what you're doing. And that is the fallacy of social media, because we compare, because we're all boring, mundane people. Like, there's nobody in here, I don't think, that's a superstar. And so we all have boring lives, but we compare ourselves to the highlight reels of everybody else. And you don't deserve that. You do not deserve to compare yourself to others in that way. I had a pastor one time, I'll never forget, Hayes McKay. Some of you probably know him. He said, it is absolutely idiotic to try to keep up with the Joneses. You buy things you don't need with money you don't have to impress people that you don't even like. And just when you get caught up with the Joneses, they go to the bank and they refinance. And the cycle starts again and again. So you'll never be able to keep up with the Joneses. Don't even try. One of the people that I have a lot of admiration for is Senator Katie Boyd Britt. I'm sure some of you have met her before. She is extremely, extremely talented, extremely charismatic. She can speak faster than my mind can form a complete thought. If you could check the boxes of what it means to be a perfect political leader, Senator Katie Boyd Britt would be it. And this is the best part. She is younger than I am. She has accomplished more in her small, short career than I probably ever will in the entirety of my professional career. And so you might think that as a driven person that is competitive, like many of us are, that I would be jealous of Katie, but I promise you I'm not. And I'm not here to preach to you today, but I do believe that God gives each and every one of us the talents and the skills that we need on our journey through life. Her journey is much different than mine. The person sitting next to you did not start at the same place that you did. Maybe they had more growing up. Maybe they had less. You're here today. We're all going to eventually end up at the same place, but we're all on a different journey. Remember that. Don't compare your journey to somebody else. Don't watch the national news. That might surprise you coming from an elected official. The news is not there to inform you. The news is there to infuriate you and to monetize your eyeballs as you click, as you share, as you are infuriated, and as you share those stories with others. The news tries to make every problem in the world seem like your problem to solve, but I promise you, it is not. And if you are not paying for something like the news, then you are the product that is being sold. So avoid the news, the national news, if at all possible. To add, you must learn how to subtract. Letting go is the key to unlocking joy. So every year, as I approach the new year, I would think about all the things that I've accomplished in the past year and all the things I want to accomplish in the new year. And I take inventory of my financial portfolio. What do I want to add to my portfolio? What do I want to add to my list of accomplishments? More. But I'll tell you, I've learned over my years that the most miserable people I know are the people that can't let go of anything. It's not that they don't have enough, they just can't let go of certain things. How can you go forward in life when you have all this stuff that's holding you back, that's weighing you down as you're trying to go through life? You can't. So maybe we need to learn how to forgive each other. Maybe we need to learn how to forgive ourselves, because sometimes that could be more difficult than forgiving others. To add, you must subtract. Sometimes you have to edit people out of your life. That's not to say that they're bad people. Maybe they're just not good influences on you where you are in your life. To add, you must learn how to subtract. You must also accept that every blessing comes with a burden. If you're going to be a great musician, you're going to have to sacrifice thousands of hours to become a great musician. Thousands of hours that you could have spent with your friends, with your family, doing other things. You're going to have to sacrifice that. A lot of times your success in life is going to be limited only by what you are willing to give up, only limited by the burdens that you are willing to bear. And it doesn't have to be anything grand. It could be as simple as my daughter's bedroom. So she had a small bedroom on one end of the house, and she wanted the mother-in-law suite because it's got a big bedroom, or it is a big bedroom. It's got its own bathroom. It's got a big closet to put all of her nice clothes in there. What little girl would not want that? So I was excited, and she was excited, and we moved her into the mother-in-law suite. Now she's got this big girl bedroom. But every blessing comes with a burden. So the burden for her is that it's right next to the kitchen. And despite my many months of trying, I get up early in the morning, and I have yet to figure out how to make coffee and breakfast, as quiet as a ninja. So I'm always waking her up. Every blessing comes with a burden. The last thing I want to leave you is this. You are the man in the arena, or you are the woman in the arena. Now, this is a university setting, so I'm not going to insult anybody's intelligence, but I'm going to say most people in this room have probably never heard of the speech by one of my heroes, President Theodore Roosevelt, called Citizenship in a Republic. It was a speech he gave in France after he left the office of presidency, but more of you most likely have heard of the phrase or heard of the passage, the man in the arena. It is not the critic who counts. Not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. But the credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again because there can be no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best in the end knows the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be among the cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. So the first time I read that passage, it was a few years back. It was after I'd been elected to the county commission. I was reading a biography on President Roosevelt. And it really spoke to me because I don't know if you know this. Some of you probably do. Some of you will figure it out when you run for public office. But when you win an elected office, sometimes politics can attract, let's just call them what it is, people that are a little bit out there. And these people sometimes are your critics. It's not that they're opposed to what you're doing. It's just they're opposed to it because it is you that is doing it. They're just critical. And so when I read that passage, I thought, you know what? President Roosevelt was actually very right. So I'm the one that's got to make the decisions. I got to make the decisions that I'm comfortable living with. I'm the one that's got to look at myself in the mirror. So I need to make my decisions and not worry about the critics. But I figured out as I pondered that passage, there's actually a little bit deeper meaning. And that deeper meaning is this: don't live your life according to the expectations of others. So when I was in college, my best friend at the time, I told him, I said, I think I want to work. I think I could do this. I want to work for the CIA or the NSA. And he laughed at me. He laughed at me because he had different expectations for my life than I did. And I'm not, I've probably done the same thing to different people from time to time, but we all have different expectations. And so his expectations were not what my expectations were. And I think sometimes, thinking back, like, where would I be if I did not go to work for the NSA? I don't really want to think about that. And I'm not saying that you should not ignore well-intended advice, because the people in the stands, as you are in the arena, the people in the stands, they're your parents, they're your family, they're cheering you on, they're shouting advice. But you also have your enemies in the stands, and they're cursing you, and they're hurling insults at you. That's part of life. Just remember, you are the person in the arena. You have to look at yourself in the mirror every day, so be comfortable with the decisions that you make. It's been said by many people that when you talk to people in nursing homes, and you ask them, what do you regret? It's not the things that they did that they regret, but it's the things that they did not do. So if you can live your life according to your own expectations, if you can resist comparing yourselves to others, if you can limit your time on social media, if you can limit your exposure to the national news, if you can learn to let go, if you can accept that that burdens come with all of your blessings, then you will be a joyful person. And when you are a joyful person, you'll be much more successful and much more happy than right now you can possibly imagine. Thank you.